Hello and welcome back to CSS3 Animations. In this video, we're going to talk about how we can animate two different properties at the same time. So far, we've just animated one property at a time, for example, the height of our list items. Now we're going to talk about animating the text within those list items, but I want to do two things to the text. I want to brighten it up so that the color is white instead of gray, and I want to nudge it down a little bit so that when that list item expands downward, when that height or when it gets taller, we want that text to move down just a couple of pixels to keep it somewhat vertically centered within that list item. So we already have a rule for these anchor tags within each list item, and that rule is contained here. So again, this is the unordered list with a class of top nav. Inside that, we're looking at the list items, and inside that, we're looking at the specific anchor tags or links within that list item. So this link is what we want to change. It's what we want to animate. We have the color right here. It's set to a light gray color of #AAA. And then we've basically stretched out this anchor tag so that it spans the entire width and height of each list item. And the way we do that is we give it a position of absolute, a top and left value of 0, and then a width and height of 150 pixels by 25 pixels. That way, the clickable area of that anchor tag, instead of just covering the text itself, it covers the entire width and height of the button. Well, what we want to do now is we want to animate the color, and we also want to animate this top value here. We want to animate that top value so that it nudges our text down about 5 pixels. So since we're making changes, since we're animating this anchor tag, then this rule is where we need to put the transition properties for that. So we're going to go to the end of this rule where it says text decoration none, and we'll go to the next line still inside that rule, and we'll get started. So for now, I'm just going to use the simple transition properties. So I'm not going to do all of the vendor prefixes just yet. We want to get it working here. I know that it's going to work in the most recent version of Chrome, even without the vendor prefix. So it's okay to go ahead and do that if you know it works. So we'll set the transition property. For now, we'll just do color, and we'll get that working first before we deal with the movement of the text. So then we'll set transition duration to the same duration as our previous animation, 0.3 seconds. And then finally, transition timing function. And we don't really need this here since it's such a short animation and it's going to look fine at the default. But I want to go ahead and enter it in so that we'll get used to doing it. We'll set that to ease. So we've created the transition properties. Now all that's left is to create the starting and ending keyframes for that animation. Well, it's going to start at a value of AAA and it's going to end at a value of white. So let's create another rule here for top nav space li space a : hover. And we're going to change the color when we hover over it to #FFF. So let's see if that works. Let's save our file, jump into Chrome, and you'll notice we're looking now at lesson 5 index.html. So we'll refresh that page, and now when we hover over our buttons, you'll see that our text color is now animating. It's not just jumping from gray to white, it's actually animating over the course of 0.3 seconds. And when we move away from it, it animates back to gray. So now let's talk about how we can add a second property to this. So we're going to go back into our file, and down here is where we set our transition property, and we've set it to equal to color, but we can also set it equal to something else. So we can type comma, space, and then top, and then we can create an animation for the color property and the top property. So we can do one of two things here. We can either leave these alone, since both of these are going to have the same values, or if they're going to have separate values, then we can enter in something else here. So we could type 0.3 seconds for color, comma, space, and then 2 seconds for the top animation. And then if we wanted different easing, we would say ease for color, comma, space, and then maybe ease out for top. So you would do that if you wanted to change the values for each of the different properties you're animating. But if you want all of the properties to have the same values here, we just need to enter it in once. We don't have to say 0.3 seconds, comma, space, 0.3 seconds. If both of them are going to have the same duration, we can just leave it like it is. So now that we've done that, we need to create our ending keyframe for the top property. Right now the top property is set to 0, and then up here in the hover, We're going to set the top property to about 5 pixels, and we'll see how that looks. So let's save our file, jump over to Chrome, and then refresh the page. And now when we hover over our buttons, you'll see that the text is brightening up, it's turning white, and it's moving down. So that's how you create multiple animations for one object. So we're animating, again, the color and the top property in order to get it to move and change color. Now, I'm not going to apply all of the vendor prefixes to this, because in our next video, we're going to talk about a way that we can combine these properties into one property in order to save us some headache with typing all of this out over and over again. So we'll talk about that in the next video. Thank you for watching.